right, well, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have some wonderful presenters with us today, 5 of you, and I wish there were some more. We have 10 books. They would have been here also. But this is a wonderful thing for me because we've been reviewing schools, colleges, grad school programs, and have spread out to curriculum providers, course providers, and it's just such a wonderful extension of the Cardinal Newman Society and the evaluation that we do for families to choose and for you all to choose some good materials that are faithful to the church. So I highly recommend every single one of your products and your programs as well. Sister John Dominic, they're going to introduce themselves and I'll give them the mic. They can then speak for about 8 minutes since we're a little bit behind time, and then we'll just pass that down. We'll have a little bit of time after for questions, so hold all of your questions until the end. Okay, Sister John Dominic.
Okay, good. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate it. It's great to be with you all here this morning, and 8 minutes. All right. So someone wave at me if I go 8 minutes and 30. I just used 10 seconds of the 8 minutes. Okay. I'm Sister John Dominic. I'm a Dominican sister of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist. I've been involved with Catholic education now I was a principal for 20 years, and then like 15 years teaching. So then what I do is now our community, we're primarily involved with Catholic education, but we've started an apostolate where we're creating resources for schools. And so we're taking our experience that we have in the classroom kind of from the field and focusing on the gap and doing what we can to help support educators and families and parishes. So it's like evangelization and catechesis and then Catholic education. When I was a principal, one of the, obviously since I'm a Dominican, I was like, let's talk about virtue education. And my teachers are like, we don't know what virtue is. Okay, now mind you, this is one of our schools that we own. We have daily mass, we have a chapel, we've got the best, and we hire them for mission. And they were like, how do I teach, prudence to a kindergartner? I said, well, you can do it, So I was like, all right, so that's the expectation I have. I was like, but if we're going to do this, we're going to do this together. So all our resources that we developed were based, obviously, on the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas. And we really took it and made our resources practical and intuitive. So like, what does virtue look like and sound like? So at the heart of virtue, Jesus Christ is the perfectly virtuous man. So virtue is really what it looks like and sounds like to be a Christian, to be a disciple of Christ. And that's what and that's a disciple of Christ is someone who's been with Jesus, ultimately is going to be a saint. And that's what all of us, our aim is and what we're trying to do day in and day out. So what happened actually with the landscape of Catholic education over the past 50 years is that when the priests and the religious left, okay, the virtue education left. And they walked out. Now, it's not to say that the laity is not virtuous. They're virtuous. They just don't know the words. They don't have the lexicon. They don't have the language. Because to be a Catholic educator, you have to have courage. You have to be patient. You have to be responsible. I mean, all the virtues are there, but they just don't understand the meaning of it, and the richness of the virtuous life. So there's this gap that has gotten wider and wider, and that was the impact that I saw with my teachers. They were virtuous, they just didn't know what the words meant, okay? And so we've really just reintroducing back into the schools this lexicon of virtue. But what's happened is that if you're not intentionally teaching it, right? So the Catechism says that virtue is acquired by an education, right? We know that it's infused in our baptism. This is flowing from our graces, the sanctifying grace that we have. But it needs to be taught, it needs to be modeled, it needs to be witnessed to them so that they can see it. So as we have this gap that's happening, other things started to fill that in. Character programs. I mean, like if I had thought about this years ago, I could be, not that I want to be rich, but we could be like, all of us could be in this room. Look what Stephen Covey's done, I was looking at charter schools that were taking the students out of our schools because they were putting virtues on the wall. You know, there's, like fortitude, prudence, temperance. I'm like, you're not only you're taking our students, you're taking our language, And I was like, this isn't going to happen. And so what's happened in that gap is that because human nature isn't going to change, so when Thomas talked about virtue and he talked about, the understanding of, Christian anthropology of the person, understanding the intellect and the will and the emotions, I mean, he was right, okay? So what's filled this gap is social-emotional learning. So what's happening is Catholic schools are trying so hard to get back like Catholic identity. They're trying to do this, but they're letting in the secular social-emotional learning programs in, and they're unraveling because what they're doing is they're teaching the children to be dependent upon themselves and not dependent upon the grace of Christ, and to know that their inner strength comes from knowing the person of Jesus Christ, and that's the foundation. So what we've done is that so I'm like, well, this can't happen, I'm like, so I love Catholic education, like, this is not going to happen. So we've also taken with the virtues and brought in the neuroscience findings that were found of the decade of the brain, 1990 to 2000. And I work with a woman that's a clinical neuropsychologist. She got her doctorate during the decade of the brain. So we take the main findings of this, and in our Catholic social emotional learning, we're teaching the youth. So this is a whole curriculum, starting kindergarten all the way through high school, where we're teaching about the brain, teaching about the nervous system, so that the students have a sense of agency, so that they can regulate themselves, but it's all rooted in their understanding of the relationship of the person of Jesus Christ. And and flowing from the grace of baptism, okay? So, and then we look to the saints as models of this. So it's all integrated. And basically what I say, I can say to an audience like this, the neuroscience has shown that Thomas Aquinas was right, okay? All right, so we knew the Holy Spirit was leading him, all right? And then the second part of that, which is important, is there's a lot of studies with the impact of technology and the anxiety and the depression, and so it's important for us as educators to understand the impact of stress, because and also with the impact of the discipline. And with stress, if a child is not regulated, they're not in a relational sense with their teacher or something with their peers, even with their parents, their cortex is not open for learning. So you can have the best curriculum, and the Catholic Church has the thing, but if that little kid in the seat is completely dysregulated, they're not hearing a thing that's being taught. And it's the teachers are the ones that need to be able to be attuned to that so they can use their relationship with that child because all the hard work that they're doing. So we can't dismiss social emotional learning. We can't dismiss it, okay? Because it's not going to, because the need for it is not going away because of technology, okay? And that's impacting it, and because the children are coming in with the anxiety and the depression and such, that's there. So we have to be open-minded to it. So we've developed an alternative for you that you can do it. I got 2 minutes here. But the other impact of that would be behavior, right? So what I've done too in the work with Dr. Villa and I have done this work where we've taken the science with the brain-to-line discipline. There's a lot of people out there on the secular side, Dr. Mona Delhook, Dr. Laurie Desitel, Dr. Dan Siegel, a lot of these people, they're doing amazing work, but they're just scientists. They're not looking at this from a Christian perspective. So we're bringing in the faith, but also like bringing in St. John Bosco's preventive system. And everything that St. John Bosco did as he worked, because as he took the orphans and the youth off the streets in Turin, those young people completely dysregulated, okay? They weren't seen, they weren't known, they weren't loved. And that's what he provided for them. And that's really at the heart of what the science, the neuroscience has shown that children need, all right? So it's also taking the attachment theories and things, so we're bringing these together, that we're body and soul for wholeness, for holiness, and also just understanding of secure attachment if you want to take that understanding of it. So Open Light Media, we have all that curriculum. We have virtue curriculum all the way from kindergarten all the way to adults. And we have a Virtue Quest survey where people can you can take your survey. It's a great thing to do with your staff. That's totally free. It's been fully validated. Adults and students, you can find what your top virtues are, because God the Father told Catherine of Siena, he's given everyone primary virtues. So we need to discover what that primary virtue is that God the Father has blessed us with, that we live from the strength of that virtue. And that's a great thing. And you teach children about virtue spotting and such. We also have, if you want to get a taste of some of this, if you go to the App Store, there's something called the Torch app, okay? The sister's going to pass around some little keychain things for you. That's a totally free app that we've done. It's kind of like Hallow Light by Dominicans. But it has the rosary, it has our music, but it has a little bit of introduction to some of this content if you want to poke around and take a look at it, okay? All right, I think that's my 8 minutes. All right, next.
We're just going.
And I don't want to be rude if we have to leave. I have to fly out to San Francisco because there's a conference where I want to be present with people that are doing the other kind of social emotional learning. So I've got a table at this conference.
Thank you. All right, and I need to further plug what Sister just said. We integrated the Virtue program at Kolbe Academy maybe 3 years ago. I heard her present at a Duke and Altum conference, if you guys know what that is. And it was just so impressive. And then I bought the whole set for my family, and I'm reinvigorated. You use it when it comes for a while, and then we haven't done it. Anyway, I'm Megan Lengyel. I work for Kolbe Academy. It's very nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. I have worked for Kolbe for 22 years. I've seen a lot of growth at Kolbe. My 4 children all attended or graduated from Kolbe Academy, so I've been on the parent side as well as the administrator side. And now I'm the chief academic officer there, which I used to say was kind of like the principal, but now I have a principal underneath me, which is really awesome. So anyway, so I'm here to just talk a little bit about what Kolbe can help with schools and such. We're dedicated to offering a truly Catholic classical education that forms students in wisdom, truth, and virtue. We believe that education is more than just academics. It's about nurturing the whole person, mind, body, and soul. Our mission is to help students cultivate a love of learning while preparing them not only for academic success, but ultimately for their vocation and eternal salvation. As a mission-driven organization, we're committed to making Catholic education accessible to both homeschooling families and partner schools, empowering them with the tools and resources they need to provide a rich, faith-filled education. Oh, it didn't like that. There we go. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so Kolbe was founded in 1980 by 3 families in Napa, California, who were committed to forming young Catholic citizens who could defend their faith while receiving a rigorous, academically excellent education. Kolbe first started as a small day school and has grown into an international homeschooling and online provider. From its inception, we served as a model for Catholic homeschooling families and also for those who wanted to establish Catholic independent schools. Our program now serves over 3,000 students annually, offering traditional homeschool options, live online classes, and asynchronous courses. So even though our mission has grown to serve primarily homeschooling families, we continue to partner with schools in curriculum and course offerings. So as a classical school and a Catholic program, we focus on teaching students how to think, not just what to think. Our curriculum is rooted in the great books, primary sources, and the wisdom of the church. We help students encounter truth through every discipline, from literature and history, science, and even math. The materials we develop to accompany these works, including our course plans and study guides and teacher manuals, are intentionally designed to help students see each subject within a larger story of salvation history and the mystery of the Incarnation. So in the early years, our curriculum builds strong foundations through phonics-based reading, classics children's literature, hands-on science and history. As students move into middle and high school, the curriculum deepens through primary sources, logical reasoning, and a chronological study of Western civilization alongside church history and theology. But Kolbe embraces that all truth belongs to the church. So, and this can be seen in a way we approach the sciences in particular, naturally integrating church teaching into rigorous science courses. Kolbe does not shy away from using secular science texts, but rather utilizes the rich traditions and teachings of the church to equip families and teachers to dive into the church's long tradition of faith and reason. Our goal is to form students who can think critically and seek truth across all disciplines. So instead of sending students outside the school's mission and curriculum framework, you can use these courses to meet scheduling needs or a teacher hiring gap, or just to provide access to courses that you aren't able to offer in your own school. So this gives students the structure of like a prepared course with the flexibility to complete their work on their own schedule. And there's no live meeting times with the asynchronous courses, although we do also offer live online classes. Those don't always work with scheduling for schools, but they can move through the courses at their own pace over 16-week semesters. They can have office hours with teachers as well, and then the teachers give all the feedback and the final grades, everything through our learning management system. Okay, so that's basically all I have. Pretty short presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions on anything, if anyone has any. No? Okay, thank you.
All right. Hello there, everybody. My name is Rosario Reilly. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for giving me this platform to share a little bit about Aquinas learning. First of all, just can I say ditto on everything she said. Kolbe. Kolbe was one of my inspirations early on when I was homeschooling, starting some 6 years ago. And we did actually Kolbe for about a year or two. So I fully support a lot of what you guys have done and shown us how to do it. So yeah, so Aquinas learning is, first of all, like Sister said, Aquinas got it right. So yay. Glad I picked that name. And then I think it's some pictures there. Ours is a homeschool curriculum, and we provide it to people who want to have it at their homes or at their centers. Those are the main two things. But all in all, it came from basically my prayers for my own family. We have 5 kids who are very close in age. So we started homeschooling. I was a teacher and in the public school and also in the Catholic school and in the Montessori. I did all sorts of different teaching. And then I had kids. Then I thought, okay, there's that pull for your vocation as a spouse and a mother and delighting in those babies, and I just couldn't leave them. So homeschooling was definitely the option for me because, first of all, affordability and definitely flexibility. When the doctor says to you, well, you're pregnant, just put your feet up, and all that only applies to the first child, as everybody knows. That doesn't happen after that. Most of the homeschool curricula that I saw, there were bring school to your home. So I did that, and I was a teacher, so I knew how to set up my basement. It looked like a school. Slowly but surely, I started going, okay, well, we don't have to do it like that because we're at home. And we could do things a little differently. And then I did come to Andrew Kern's talk at CRC. Are you familiar with CRC Institute? Okay. The Contemplation of Nature is still an audio, by the way, that's on their website. I'm giving a little plug to them. It's what connected all the dots for me on the history of education, philosophy of education, and of course, the Cardinal Newman Society's call for true Catholic education. How can I get away from that, right? No. Even our name was helped by Patrick because we were like, what is the name? It has to be Aquinas. Okay. It's a K-12 curriculum for the independent homeschooler or hybrid centers. And when I say hybrid centers, they're licensing our curricula. So they have a little bit more flexibility. They can meet once a week, twice a week. In my particular center in Manassas, we meet once a week for K-6 and then twice a week for 7th and up, because then they do the sciences and the maths more deeply in the second day. Mainly because we are a mixed age group. So at our Integrated Humanities Day on Thursdays, we can't really offer the math class there because 1st and 3rd graders together don't do the same math. So things like that end up on Tuesday. It's Catholic to the core. Again, like Sister said, the central hub of our wheel is Jesus. Everything is Christocentric. And I teach our mentors that all the subjects that we're teaching are actually pointing fingers to Christ. And if they're not, if you think of a wheel with the hub, the spokes will kind of just float around with nothing, right? If you don't have that central hub. The classical approach it's the approach that we're after, that they learn to behold, wonder, contemplate, inquire, and like Aquinas says, they learn best through discovery rather than a teacher. There's another way, but discovery is the best. The one that distinguishes our program the most, I think, is the fact that it's family friendly. So like I said, I did different curricula in the past, but having a theme, so we have 3 cycle themes that repeat, and having a theme as a family and therefore a community. All in our community right now, we were studying medieval times, and now timing, this is the Holy Spirit, we're studying the U.S. history. So perfect for America 250. And we're already starting, we went to the Sales on Potomac, and now this could be a problem because one time my family wanted to go to Boston, and I told my husband, wait, but it's cycle 2. We need to go next year when it's cycle 3 and we're doing all of America. But when you do that, and the literature, everything is integrated as much as we can do it. The literature, the discussions, Socratic discussion, and the history, they're all really focused on those same themes. And on our website, you'll see the different themes if you go on there. So that, to me, is the highlight of Aquinas Learning, is that it's family-friendly or community-friendly. And the integration goes across curricula, so it makes it relevant. So when you have students and your children all learning the same sort of thing and integrated, so you're learning about perhaps Pompeii and the geography of Italy, and science, volcanoes, and even in art, we do mosaics that 1 week, and they're focused on the mosaics that they found in Pompeii, so integrated. The repeating cycles, like I mentioned earlier. Oh, look who's there. I found a picture of Patrick. He's my teacher, rhetoric, logic. The imagination must be fed good food, or it will become the haunt of monsters. That's Michael O'Brien's quote. Catholic to the core. Classical approach, family-friendly style. Scholastic seasoning. Yes, of course. I'm a good cook, so I like seasoning. And you know what I actually tell my families? What do? We marinate in truth, goodness, beauty. If you guys cook, you know what I mean about marination. Sainthood is the goal ultimately. So scholastic reasoning, or reasoning in general, we teach explicitly. We do actually talk about reasoning, giving evidence, logic. We have a 6-year track of logic, rhetoric at the Aquinas Learning program. And the mixed age level, single sex if you can. I mean, obviously some centers have very few kids. At my center in Manassas, we have 150 children. And so Parva is co-ed, Prima 1 is grades 1 to 3 mixed, Prima 2 is grades 4 through 6 mixed, Alta mixed ages, Alta 2 mixed ages, but Prima 1 and Prima 2 are single sex also. So we have a Prima 1 girls, Prima 1 boys, and the mentor should be the one to come up here and tell you how great that is to have the single sex classrooms at that age. And then at the Alta age, we bring them back co-ed again for specific reasons of maybe we don't have enough students anyway to have separate classes. We almost did, but the mentor's like, no, don't separate them. We need the girls with the boys to kind of balance the classroom out. All right, the 3 cycles. Oh, I do have it here. So cycle 1, 2, and 3. These are the themes that we're focused on, and then everything else, literature and whatnot, crafts, arts, are integrated with that. And one of the big helps for our integration is Catholic's textbook project. He'll tell you more about it, but we use their their history books, and they've been really very helpful for our mentors and our families to keep them in their library. So they have the collection there. All right. And as far as sales, how we sell the program is through course module. So Parva, which is the kindergarten, Prima 1, K6 are level related. They have all the subjects in that module. When you get to the Alta level or middle school, high school, they're sold by subject. Okay. That's the QR code for our brochure if you want to take a picture of that. That's our website, aquinaslearning.com. We also do offer asynchronous classes, and again, that comes out of need. You know, we were teaching, and I traveled. Andrew Pudawa, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's the one who told me about there was a conference in the Philippines for homeschoolers. And he said, you ought to go there. And I went there, and there were 1,000 attendees in this one conference. And he had his IW booth there. And so we met people who wanted to do Aquinas Learning. So one of our centers is the Philippines. They have about 40, 50 students now. It's really interesting to watch the little Filipino children recite the American presidents as part of their memory. But what they did is they took our curriculum and then added more. So they have Philippine history, they have Philippine, so they doubled their curriculum. And they're using the Catholic Textbook Project as well. But the asynchronous classes are being offered because they can't do some of our live classes here. Our classes are 7 p.m. in the evening. So it also served some of the other center directors who may have some gaps in their hiring and they couldn't find the Latin teacher. So they have their students join the 7 p.m. class. And so half your class is Filipino students, and then the rest are Americans, which is really fantastic. In fact, Nicholas taught our logic class this year, and he had a blast with them. But anyway, so that's my little quick presentation. It's really hard for me not to talk longer than 2 hours, so thank you very much.
It's good to be here. My name is Courtney Brown. I'm the executive director at the Ruah Institute. We are a nonprofit ministry based in Cincinnati. Our mission is actually dedicated to taking the vision of John Paul II that he laid out in the Theology of the Body, Humanae Vitae is why he wrote it. But anyhow, the Theology of the Body, we take that vision of man and apply it best to psychological practice and then best to school culture and parish culture. So we have two arms of our ministry. So we have clinical psychologists on staff, and then we have an educational outreach. I'm executive director of that part. Prior to that, I actually worked for Ruah as a teen evangelist. So I went around and talked about theology of the body to teens, and so forth, and then I chased my dream job, which was to be a high school principal. That did not turn out to be a dream per se. It was fun, just not a dream. You know what I mean? But then I was a K-8 principal for 7 years after that, and then now become executive director. But as a principal, it was, as Sister mentioned, putting virtues on the wall. I did that. But one of my core ethical ethoses for my students was to believe that they were a gift from God. I had it everywhere laced in my school. And I can't tell you the number of times I would have students in my office saying the exact opposite. I don't feel like anybody loves me. I don't feel like people care. And as a principal who dedicated his life to studying John Paul II, and as a core ethos in my head, and had virtue assemblies once a week, I couldn't understand what was going on. And then this image dawned on me in prayer. And it was essentially this, that it was as if my students, every day they come in here, we were teaching them that 2 + 2 is 4. But the world is teaching them that 2 + 2 is actually 1. It's teaching them division, and we're saying it's addition. And I was thinking about it, is like when it comes to the human person, there are two visions that are laid out to our students. And one is essentially, it's a question of identity. One is an identity of acquisition, where you acquire it through things you're good at, things that you're affirmed in, or, as the church proposes, an identity and self-gift. As we see in Gaudium et Spes, man cannot know himself unless he makes a sincere gift of self. So at Ruah Woods, what we do is to help schools, teachers, catechists, and families have resources to be able to teach their kids and their students how to become a self-gift, and in that language, that lexicon of gift. Because even when you think of SEL and those kinds of things, the structure by which our students are growing up in, and I'll share 2 points with this, what just really came to me, was essentially you have to acquire these things. You acquire being worthy, being valued, and being loved, instead of by the fact that you merely exist. You have that value. So the other thing I realized too, because John Paul II, he's quite prolific, I love the man, Anyways, in his encyclical on faith and reason, he gave us an image when it comes to understanding the unity between faith and reason. You probably know this image as two wings on a plane. Our current culture, modern Western civilization, moved closer to science and disregarded the stories in the great books, as y'all mentioned. Disregarded. They have no value because they're not scientifically viable. You can't empirically study it. So it disregarded it. So there's been 2 generations, if not 3 generations, being robbed of those great stories, that narrative that speaks to what it means to be a human person. And Genesis and the Kerygma got a part of that, became a part of that. That Kerygma, our salvation history, to where now our students don't even know, our kids don't even know the story, the human story. So at Ruah, what we came up with is the Ruah way. This idea of knowing that you're a gift and that you're a gift from God through reclaiming that narrative, reclaiming the true human story. And our particular niche and how we do that is we have this approach that's 4 pillars. It's our approach. It's methodological. At least that's what I think it is. First is sacramental worldview. And I don't just mean celebrating sacraments. That's for sure. That's given. But it's actually recognizing God in the truth and what is good and what is beautiful. It's beauty that moves you upward, not inward. It's a distinct movement. I know I could go on and on about that. The second is awakening wonder. Wonder is obviously, love is the birthplace of wonder. We want them to truly love and give of themselves. Wonder is that. Poetry. Like this, I used to have this with my high school students. I used to make them do poetry. I'll never forget this basketball player telling me, he used the term, I stink at poetry. I thought that was hilarious that someone would say that. So I was like, what makes you say that? He's like, well, I'm not Shakespeare. It's like, so you would compare yourself to one of the greatest poets ever? That's odd. You're a basketball player. Are you LeBron James? And he's like, no. He's like, but you still think you're good? And he's like, oh, it's different. So I asked him to write a poem about why he's not good at it. And he wrote one, and it was actually really good. Yeah, he just didn't. But there is, as you mentioned that quote from Michael O'Brien, there's a kind of an atrophitic effect of that part of the faith, that part of the brain, if you will, if we want to go there, that's not being exercised in our students. So that's where wonder comes in experiential learning. And then our last approach is dialogical. And in that method, we offer 3 ways we help you as a school or parish or our family through training, a curriculum resource that takes the theology of the body, makes it a grade level, K to 12, and then we offer environmental resources and routines. And what I mean by that is how do we get the priest involved, how do we get the parents involved, and we also started doing things that are day-to-day, that teachers can do day-to-day. I'll give you an example of one of our resources. It's not uncommon, but Lectio Divina teaching teachers how to do Lectio with K to 2, how to do Lectio with 3 to 4, how to do Lectio with 6 to 8th grade. And if you even I'll give you another one, we have to be unbelievably now intentional to teach students what they're being taught differently outside. When I was doing a PD for faculty, I said, what would this school do if your math scores were down? And actually, this was in my school. Our computation was down. We had the best, 2-3 weeks of meetings, and it was like boom, boom, boom. And then when I went into my staff and told them about this other problem we have, we need to come up with a solution to it as well. So you have to be intentional here. And so Ruah is here to help with that. And one of the things that to help with this is we instituted in my school, just give you an example of an environment and routine on day-to-day, is I did something that the culture does not teach us, and I taught kids how to be silent. We had moments of silence, and that was God's time. Only God can do that. So this is what Ruah, these are our resources to help that. So we do have a K to 12 curriculum that can be right out of the box ready. We also created a new thing to make this story come alive it's an epic audio drama. And it follows what we created as this human storyline. So 6 sessions, which follows the Kerygma, but it has the lens of JP2's vision of man. And then from all eternity, God reveals himself to be Trinitarian. He breathes that community into life and into us, and our bodies are an image of that as the male and masculine female body. Then we know what happens. We didn't like that. We wanted to be our own God. We rejected it. And then God decided, to become human in order to save us and bring us back. So he rescued us. And now we live in this time where we can either participate in that new covenant or reject it, which then leads us to whether or not we will have a body with him in eternity, if we choose for eternal happiness, or in our timeline we use the word sadness, but we know what we mean is hell. But anyhow, but that idea of moving in that. So that's the progression of all the resources and way Ruah is trying to help make that story come back alive and help you do it. Our goal is to make the lift light for your teachers and for parents, because they are told and asked to do so many things, but we're trying to do that to help in order to reestablish that story, reestablish this idea that we're made to be a gift in his gift. So thank you.
Okay, real quickly, a Catholic Textbook Project started, 37 years ago. I was teaching history, and I had a beautiful secular textbook that was really badly conceived inside. And then I had a great little photocopy of stories of people throughout history written by Ann Carroll. And so what I would do is I'd study the photocopies, I'd go in to the classroom, and I'd tell the stories to the boys, and they lapped that up. And then I had them memorize the things in the book to take the tests, and they all but threw themselves out the window. So a couple years later, I was made a headmaster, and I said, I'm going to buy Catholic textbooks for my students or for my teachers, and lo and behold, there weren't any. So I said, we must do something about it. And what we did was we went back and looked, because there are Catholic history textbooks, there are textbooks written for Catholic schools. So we went back and looked at those and realized that, thinking we could just refresh them, but we realized that they're actually written in a very different way for a very different time, and they just wouldn't work today. In many respects, they were, I called them overly parochial. They had all the Catholic triumphalism, and we see what happened in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and when we were so tested in the 60s and 70s, it didn't hold up. Everything sort of collapsed. So we thought, well, let's go back and think about the study of history, the study of all subjects ultimately, in light of how learning progressed over the millennia. And what we saw was the church has always been totally open to inquiry. So let's just be open, let's think, let's be scholarly about the understanding of history, and let's remake books fresh. Let's write them anew with an understanding that we're preparing young kids' minds to, in some sense, be an historian, to look at the story of history, to look at it in its time, and to be critical and understanding, all while following the mandate that we live in salvation history, so we have to attend to it. So we wanted the students to see that there is an overarching story. So, of course, we set about to write the textbooks, and, well, for 20-some years, we've battled the fact that these are church history books. Everybody thinks it's Catholic Textbook Project history books are church history, and they're not. They replace your history books because they are the story of history through time. It's just that they're written in kind of three different principles that we took into the writing. One is salvation history is real, so it doesn't really affect how you're telling the story of Caesar, but overarchingly, we see that, oh, there can be some important things from that. What if he didn't cross the Rubicon? What if there wasn't a Pax Romana? How would the church have spread if we didn't have that in place? So maybe as secular as that story is, it actually has a very significant role in the coming of our Savior at the time he came, in the place he came, at the crossroads of basically all trade of the world went through the Eastern Mediterranean. So there's just a lot of other dimensions, a lot of other color, a lot of other flavor that we can bring to these topics. So we set about to write those, and the second pillar was we wanted to bring narrative back to history, because history books had gotten so boring, not to mention all the stuff they cut out of it, like truth. And then we wanted to make them beautiful. We wanted the students to delight in the books that they were reading. So we set about to do this as kind of a long slog to get it understood. From the very beginning, I had the sense that what we wanted to do, I was in the independent school movement from the very, very beginning. Well, not the very, very beginning, but from the beginning of my career, yeah. Close to the beginning of our independent school movement today. But I wanted more than that, because at that time I was in the Diocese of Dallas, and the system just didn't understand. They had no concept of what a Catholic curriculum would be. So I was meeting with the superintendent regularly, and it was kind of stunning. So I thought, as we build these books, as we build them for our independent schools, why not build them also for the diocesan schools? And being a history teacher, one of my favorite stories is the Trojan horse. So that was the concept I brought in to building the textbook project. Build a Trojan horse. Build something that looks and smells like a textbook for the schools, and maybe they'll buy it. And in fact, they did. And little by little, it started to build. About 10 years ago, it really started to change and enter the parochial school market. So fast forward to today, we now, last year, some of you know, I also founded the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, built those up parallel. And I handed that off last year to focus solely on finishing the Catholic Textbook Project's history series, so that we can then start to jump out into other series. For 150 years, the Church has written beautifully about how Catholicism must permeate the entire curriculum, and we're not quite sure how to do that often. So we want to lend a hand to that. And most recently, Pope Leo said it so beautifully when he said that the faith must oxygenate every subject. And if you start thinking about what oxygen does to the body, what it does for every cell, it's the miracle of health. It's the miracle of life, biologically. And so think of what might happen to the curriculum in your school if faith becomes that oxygen that that revivifies every subject in your school. It can be remarkable. And all of these things that everyone is talking about just becomes more and more alive. You know, if you go back 10, 20, 30 years, it was increasingly relegated to religion class. And even that, when I was growing up, centered on burlap and felt. But I will just show you a couple of things, because right now the most exciting thing is we're working on, as I said, we're working on finishing it out. So we're doing, all we have left is K through 3, and then grade 10 and 12. So 10 is about 2/3 written. That should be out next fall of 27, not this coming fall. And then K through 3 is the big thing, because that's a really different pedagogical area. And so what we did for that, and I will show you here our, if I can go to the full screen, it's easier to see. We could share all this with you, not here at the podium, but you can see it online. But here's the core of what we're doing. We're doing the ancient, medieval, and modern, well, actually bridge to modern. We don't go up to the modern, for grades 1, 2, and 3. And we base it in story, so that every child gets a storybook, and they're going to read it like they're going to read a little story at bedtime or on the couch or whatever. That is the core of our program, because little children need stories, and they need stories of people. As they get to middle school, they start to be more interested in and love the battles and the geography and all of that. People too, but it gets much more active. And then high school, it really kind of builds into the ideas, and they really start hammering into the ideas. But for the little kids, we want to give them story, because that's the ultimate grammar of history, is the stories of these people. So we begin with story. We build a solid foundation of vocabulary, literacy, virtue. We're actually working with Sister to infuse virtue things. And then we have the two other components. One is a teacher manual, and one is a student companion. And that's where they get the different helps, the different activities, and social studies. So a lot of the schools need social studies. They think they need social studies. Well, social studies is a great thing. But 100 years ago, it was extracted from history. And what we're doing is putting the social studies concepts back into their natural place. It's like studying the kidney in virtue of where it belongs in the human body. A kidney is not a thing that makes any sense outside of the human body. So we take those social studies concepts and put them back into the story of history. Anyway, you can find this on our website, catholictextbookproject.com. I invite you to go just bounce around there, look at it, see what we're doing, see our philosophy, and then sign up. We're popping emails out periodically, unveiling more and more of the artwork. For example, we hired real artists, not AI, to build the art in the book, because to me that's very important. As a kid, I want to read a book, and I want to see art, and I want to remember art. How many of us see a book from our childhood, see that piece of art, and we go, oh. So anyway, yeah, I could have done a lot of art a lot faster for very, very cheap with AI, and we spent a lot of money hiring real artists. So that's a big, big part of what we're doing. So that's it. It's 10:10. How far do we go?
So we've got about 10 minutes, and then at 10:30 we need to be over in the nest, and we're going to do an activity over there.
So we could do an open Q&A for 10 minutes? Okay.
Q&A for probably. I want to make sure that Rosario and Aquinas Learning and Kolbe, that you know that you can purchase their products. You don't have to go through the full program and everything, but you can go online and get marvelous Catholic-infused products from both of them as well. So, questions? Go ahead. Stay up there, Michael.
Anybody questions for any of us?
You said K to 3, but is it just going to be 1 to 3?
Right. I said K to 3. We are developing K to 3, but 1 through 3 are the textbooks. And that's what we're doing first. We're piloting in approximately 50 schools starting in August this year. They just went to print last week. So we're doing first through third. Kindergarten we're going to do subsequently. As we were working through it, we realized we need to take a couple years, and once we get 1 through 3 in the schools, see what they're thinking, what they would like, and what we'll end up doing 4K is not a textbook, but materials for the kindergartners. probably following on sort of the Montessori idea of the continent study and introducing kids to the continents, countries, via saints. So there's saints from around the world at different times. So they're learning about the different cultures through their saints. They're learning about the places they lived, and they're learning the different times that they lived. So you're really encompassing a lot by just going through the kind of the world of saints. I could, but I'd have to kill you. No. It's a big discussion. Elementary science is very high on our list. I'm working with a fella from another organization to maybe branch out into math. And then, of course, everybody else wants us to do language arts. There's already a lot of language arts resources out there, so I'm not sure what that's going to look like. What I know one thing that we do right now, and that's when we find something that we like, we're going to partner with them. And we're going to start selling their books so that we not only have our own materials, but more quickly we can help schools find the materials they need. So, for example, Catholic Heritage Curricula created an art history program that is fantastic. And it sort of aligns with our upper school books. So you could get this program. So we're going to start selling that here in about 2 weeks. Any of our other panelists' questions?
I have a question for Ruah Woods. Sorry, what was your first name again? Courtney. Courtney?
Yeah.
Do you have materials that allow a TOB program to be incorporated within an existing theology program, or are they all standalone curricula that are taught separately?
Yeah, ours are standalone in a sense that it's designed to just do like one lesson. So K to 5 is like 9 lessons total for the year. 6th to 8th grader units, so you can split those into 2. I've done both. When I was principal, we used. I'm not claiming this is the best basal text. We used Sophia, and so I mapped it out for my teachers. So when they were doing this is when this lesson aligns. So I did like a mapping for them. But my teachers found it was just better that I was like, we're going to do an intentional day where this is just going to be something unique and special. So we called it TOB Day. This is before I got to Ruah. We called it TOB Day, and so the whole school was doing it at the same time. And they didn't have parent letters at the time, so we made parent letters for, and I'm not going to say that's the end-all, be-all, because parents are a hard thing to get engagement with. I was telling Denise this morning, the only way I found that I would get parents is if they came to see their kids. So whenever they saw their kids. So you can integrate it that way, but it's really meant to be a standalone at this point. So, yeah.
And it's literature-based.
It is, oh yeah, it is literature-based. So we use storybooks to convey these deep meanings. I'll just give you a quick example. So in 3rd grade, to talk about original solitude, which is essentially that we were created to be in relationship with God, and then eventually leads to unity, that we're created to be with another. It's a story of Mafaro's beautiful daughters, which is 2 daughters. The king's going to get married. I was looking to get married. Dad has 2 daughters, and it talks about their journey. Manyar, which means shame in Swahili, is one of the daughters, and she is nasty to her sister and has a lens of self, is always focused on herself and is mean to people. And then Niasha, which means grace, has a lens of gift. And there's a scene in that book where she's talking to a snake in a garden, and she's talking to the plants and the animals. And it just has this lens of gift. And so when they go on their journey, you can see the 2 things, and then she ends up getting to win the king or whatnot. There's a lot of imagery in this story, but essentially at the end, when Manyara sees everything in the self, at the end she sees a monster. But then when Niasha gets to the end, there's this hut. She sees the garden snake who she talked to, which was the king disguised. And so she saw gift the entire language. And there's an activity we have, and it compares what would Niasha's kingdom look like if she reigned as queen? And then what would Manyara's kingdom look like if she reigned as queen? I had a boy tell me in the class, he said, oh, it's like Scar and Mufasa, which I know we're not trying to do the Disney thing, but it just gives you that. So we use story to teach those deep themes. And for 6th to 8th grade, we use Lexio to really deep. And then we use this Greek word kalos. So we do a lot of that, like art, Visio Divina, the stuff ICLE puts out, and those kinds of things. We kind of use the same method or whatnot with 6th to 8th grade.
Yeah, so it actually bridges the theology, your religion class with your English class as well. It's just a wonderful bridge.
Yeah.
And bigger themes can be brought out over a month or something like that. So it's not like, it's not hard to add Ruah Woods to anything, and the standards of Christian anthropology, right? So that we co-wrote with you all. So, other questions, thoughts?
Thank you all for what you do. Yeah. We just started Ruah's this year, and then we also just started Open Light Media with the Virtues this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
I did love the Ruah Woods book. We looked over the commonplace book.
Yeah, so the 6th to 8th grade, we use commonplace books, like Marcus Aurelius had one, and Mark Twain, and it's supposed to be a book of gathering ideas. So it's not like a journal, which is just tell what you think. It's like, so that's what it's supposed to do.
I had a question for, if I need the mic.
Ask the question.
I just want to ask him. So with regard to, you were saying for the Lectio Divina, you have differences between the younger grades. Can you share a little bit about the difference? Yeah.
So just really quick, with Lexio, we did an acronym based off of, you're essentially teaching them how to pray with sacred reading, right? And I know that with K to 2, the whole focus is on what is God asking of you now. So the question of discernment isn't detective work to try to figure it out. It's just a question, God's asking us something every day. That's what it means to be a saint. And for these little kids, it's basically 3 things. Be the best, be a holy son and daughter, do your schoolwork and do your chores and pray. You can be good. And I'm simplifying it, but yes, obey your parents. But so K to 2, just when you read the story, what is God asking of you in this story? And you're just giving them the capacity to say, what is God teaching me? 3rd grade, you start to move into, now imagine yourself as one of the characters, be Jesus in the story, or you the woman at the well, those kinds of things like that. And so what is the story teaching, saying to you, and what is God saying to you through the story? And then 6th to 8th grade, you go deeper into, okay, what sticks out? What stands out?